This story is titled, I Bought My Wife's Family House. Then she sided with her entitled mother. I kicked them both out of life, and now they are left with nothing. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey Reddit, let me introduce myself. I'm Ethan, 36 male, a self-made millionaire living in Dallas, Texas. My life hasn't exactly been a walk in the park. Every dollar I have was earned through sweat, sacrifices, and more late nights than I can count. I built my real estate empire from scratch, starting with just a single duplex that I bought with a small loan and big dream. Over the years, I turned that little investment into a thriving business, proving to myself and everyone else that I didn't need handouts or shortcuts to succeed. So, when I met Lisa, 33 female, I thought I'd finally found someone who got me, someone who wasn't all about my money or status. She came across as genuine, down-to-earth, and sweet, the total opposite of her mother, Carol. Lisa would laugh about how overbearing her mom could be, and I'd just nod along, thinking it was probably exaggerated. I mean, how bad could one person really be? Turns out, very bad. Carol was the kind of woman who could make the strongest person crumble with a single glare. She had this uncanny ability to dominate every conversation, and if you disagreed with her, you might as well have committed a felony. She didn't just have opinions, she had mandates. Growing up, Lisa had no say in anything. Carol dictated her wardrobe, chose her friends, and even decided which college she'd attend. It wasn't guidance, it was a dictatorship. At first, Lisa seemed to have shaken off her mom's grip. She was independent, funny, and had her own dreams. But it didn't take long to see that Carol still had a leash on her, even if it wasn't as obvious anymore. Every big decision Lisa made came with an unspoken condition, Carol's approval. It drove me insane, but I kept my mouth shut because, well, I loved Lisa. When we got engaged, though, that's when the power struggle with Carol really began. She didn't just offer suggestions for the wedding, she tried to run the whole damn thing. From the flower arrangements to the guest list, she wanted her fingerprints on everything. The final straw? She tried to veto our choice of venue because it didn't have the charm she envisioned. I had to draw the line. This is our wedding, not yours, I told her, my voice firm but polite. She acted like I'd just stolen her firstborn child. The waterworks started, and she dramatically accused me of tearing the family apart. Of course, Lisa begged me to compromise. It's just one day, she said. Can't you let her feel included? Fine. I caved, but only to an extent. I let Carol pick a few minor details, like the table centerpieces and the dessert menu, but I held my ground on the big stuff. The wedding was beautiful, no thanks to Carol's meddling. But looking back, it was clear the day wasn't about us for her. It was about proving she still held the reins. Before the wedding, I made another tough call. I asked Lisa to sign a prenup. It wasn't exactly a romantic gesture, but I'd worked too hard to risk losing everything if things ever went south. To my surprise, Lisa didn't put up much of a fight. I get it, she said. You've built something amazing, and you want to protect it. At the time, I thought her calm reaction was a sign of maturity. Later, I'd realize it was probably just another example of how much Carol's control had trained Lisa to go along with what others wanted. For a while, things were good. Married life was great. Lisa was supportive, loving, and everything I'd hoped for in a partner. We traveled, tried new restaurants every week, and even started talking about buying a vacation home. It felt like we were building something solid together. But like a storm brewing in the distance, Carol's presence was always there, waiting to stir things up again. Little did I know, the drama with Carol was just getting started. That woman didn't just want to be part of our lives. She wanted to be the center of it. If I thought standing up to her during the wedding planning was tough, I had no idea what was coming next. Carol wasn't just overbearing. She was strategic, manipulative, and downright relentless. And she wasn't about to let me or anyone else keep her from getting what she wanted. So, about 6 months ago, Carol and her husband, Frank, decided to sell their house in Austin. The place was, how do I put this nicely, a dump. It had potential once upon a time, but decades of neglect had turned it into a creaky old money pit. The roof leaked, the plumbing groaned, and the kitchen looked like it hadn't been updated since the 80s. Not to mention, Carol's signature floral wallpaper was everywhere. It was a nightmare disguised as a house. Lisa got the call first. Carol pitched the idea like it was some incredible, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You two should buy it, she said. Keep it in the family. When Lisa brought it up to me, I laughed. Like, full-on belly laughed. You want us to buy that house? The one falling apart? It's not that bad, Lisa said, trying to sell me on the idea. It just needs a little TLC. I could see where this was going. Carol had planted the seed, and now Lisa was watering it. But I wasn't biting. Babe, that house needs more than TLC. It needs an exorcism and probably a bulldozer. Lisa didn't let up, though. She kept throwing out reasons we should buy it. It's where I grew up, she said. We'd get a great deal since it's family. Carol even went as far as to suggest we could turn it into a rental property, saying it'd be a smart investment. The woman was relentless. I finally told Lisa, let's run the numbers. I wasn't about to make a decision based on nostalgia or guilt trips. So I sat down with a contractor friend to estimate the repairs. The verdict? It'd take at least $150,000 to bring the place up to code. Add that to Carol's asking price of $450,000, and we'd be sinking $600,000 into a house that probably wouldn't be worth half that. I showed Lisa the math. This isn't a great deal, I said. This is financial suicide. But Carol wasn't done. She pulled out all the stops, going full-on emotional. She told Lisa she'd always dreamed of keeping the house in the family, that selling it to a stranger would break her heart. She even threw in some crocodile tears for good measure. Lisa, being the soft-hearted person she is, caved under the pressure. I didn't want to fight with my wife, so I reluctantly agreed. Fine, I said. We'll buy it. As long as I am able to afford whatever my wife wants, why not? Big mistake. Huge. The deal went through, and we officially became the proud owners of Carol and Frank's old house. Or as I like to call it, the money pit. Carol, of course, wasted no time patting herself on the back. You're doing the right thing, she said, smiling like she'd just solved world hunger. This house has so many memories. Yeah, memories of bad decisions and overpriced repairs. The problem started almost immediately. First, we discovered mold in the basement. Every time I turned around, there was a new issue popping up. Meanwhile, Carol was living it up in her new, downsized house, completely oblivious, or maybe just indifferent, to the chaos she'd left behind. Carol didn't just want us to buy the house. Oh no, she wanted us to preserve it. She'd randomly stop by, offering unsolicited advice about how we should decorate or which repairs we should prioritize. You can't rip out the old cabinets, she said. They're original to the house. Original? Lady, they were rotting. It didn't take long for me to realize this wasn't about the house. It was about control. Carol didn't just want to offload her problems onto us. She wanted to stay involved. The house was her leash, and she fully intended to keep tugging it. One day, Carol dropped by unannounced, carrying a stack of photo albums. She wanted to help us plan the renovations by showing us how the house used to look back in its glory days. I wasn't buying it. We've got it under control, Carol, I said, trying to keep things civil. But she wasn't having it. This isn't just any house, she said, her voice dripping with drama. This is our family's legacy. Legacy? The only thing that house was passing down was a headache. Things really hit the fan when Carol suggested we should live with her and Frank temporarily while we renovated. It'll save you money, she said, and we can all be closer as a family. I nearly choked on my coffee. Closer as a family? I said. Carol, we just bought your house. Isn't that close enough? Lisa, to her credit, didn't seem thrilled about the idea either. But Carol had a way of wearing people down. She'd keep poking and prodding until you finally gave in, just to make her stop. Around this time, Frank started acting weird. He'd call me, asking how the renovations were going or if we needed any help. At first, I thought he was just being friendly, but there was something off about his tone. It felt like he was fishing for information. I brushed it off, thinking maybe he was just trying to stay involved, since Carol was so invested in the house. Little did I know, Frank had a secret, one that would blow this whole thing wide open. Looking back, I can't believe I let it get this far. But when you're dealing with someone as entitled as Carol, it's easy to get caught up in their web. She knew exactly which buttons to push, and she played Lisa like a violin. I wanted to believe we could make it work, that buying the house was just a bump in the road. But deep down, I knew better. The house wasn't just a bad investment. It was a Trojan horse, and inside was Carol's grand plan to take over our lives. Once we moved into the house, I thought the worst of the drama was behind us. Sure, the place was a disaster, but I figured with time, effort, and a lot of money, we'd eventually turn it into something livable. What I didn't count on was Carol refusing to let go of her death grip on the property, or us. It started small, like most nightmare scenarios do. One afternoon, I came home from a long day at work to find the living room rearranged. The couch, which I distinctly remembered being against the far wall that morning, was now angled awkwardly toward the fireplace. A few throw pillows I didn't recognize had magically appeared as well. Did you move the furniture? I asked Lisa. She looked up from her phone, confused. What? Number? We both shrugged it off. I mean, maybe Lisa had moved it and forgot. Or maybe I was losing my mind. It wasn't worth making a big deal over. But then it happened again. And again. The coffee table was shifted to a weird spot, kitchen chairs were swapped around, and little things would disappear, like my favorite travel mug. It wasn't just furniture either. One time, the bathroom sink was left running full blast, and I swore up and down I hadn't touched it. "Lisa, seriously," I said, after the third or fourth incident. "Are you sure you're not messing with me? Because if you are, it's not funny." She rolled her eyes. "Ethan, I have better things to do than play musical chairs with the furniture?" At this point, I was starting to get paranoid. Something felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. It wasn't until one particularly hot afternoon that the truth finally hit me in the face. Literally. I walked into the house and was immediately greeted by the overpowering scent of Carol's perfume. That sickly floral stench she practically bathed in. It was unmistakable. "Lisa," I said, trying to keep my cool. "Did your mom stop by today?" She frowned, clearly annoyed by my question. "No, why would she? I didn't push it, but my gut told me otherwise. Carol was here. I just didn't know how or when. But I was determined to find out." The next weekend, while Lisa was out running errands, I installed security cameras around the house. I didn't tell her. I knew she'd call me paranoid and blow it off. But I needed proof, something concrete to confirm I wasn't imagining things. Sure enough, the cameras paid off. The very next week, I got a notification on my phone while I was at work. There she was, clear as day. Carol, in all her nosy glory, letting herself in with a key. She waltzed around like she owned the place, snooping through drawers, moving stuff around, and even tossing out a couple of my things that apparently didn't meet her standards. She didn't just visit, she acted like the house was still hers. I was furious. When I got home that night, I confronted Lisa with the footage. "Look at this," I said, shoving my phone in her face. "Your mom's been breaking into our house. She's throwing my stuff out. This is insane." Lisa watched the video, her face a mix of shock and discomfort. But instead of siding with me, she said, "She's not breaking in. She's just visiting. She probably misses the house." "Misses the house?" I exploded. "Lisa, she's snooping through our drawers and tossing my things like it's a yard sale. This isn't normal." Lisa defended her mom as usual. "She's not doing any harm. She's just having a hard time letting go." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Carol had crossed every boundary imaginable, and Lisa was acting like I was the crazy one for being upset, but I wasn't about to let it slide. I told Lisa, point blank, "If she steps foot in this house again without our permission, I'm calling the cops." Of course, Lisa ran straight to Carol with this, and you can imagine how that went. Carol called me the next day, sobbing hysterically. She accused me of being disrespectful and heartless, claiming I was ruining her memories. Apparently, changing the locks was akin to stabbing her in the back. I didn't care. I wasn't about to let her keep treating our home like her personal playground. That's when Carol went nuclear. She started spreading rumors to family members, saying I was trying to cut her out of Lisa's life and destroying her legacy. She even called Lisa multiple times a day, crying about how she felt betrayed. And of course, Lisa fell for it. Again. "Maybe we could give her a key," Lisa suggested one night, like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. "Just for emergencies." "Absolutely not," I said, my patience hanging by a thread. "She's already proven she can't respect boundaries. This is our house now, Lisa, not hers." One night, Carol showed up at the house, banging on the door and demanding to be let in. I refused. She screamed at me through the door, calling me every name in the book. I stood my ground, but the whole neighborhood probably heard the commotion. Later, Lisa tried to play peacemaker. "She's just upset," she said. "You know how emotional she gets. Upset doesn't give her the right to barge in and throw a tantrum," I shot back. "If you won't set boundaries with her, I will." From then on, the house felt more like a battleground than a home. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering what Carol's next move would be. She wasn't just invading our space. She was testing the limits, seeing how far she could push before I snapped. And let me tell you, I was close. Very close. By the time Frank called me to talk, I was already at my wit's end. Between Carol's uninvited visits, her dramatic meltdowns, and Lisa's constant defense of her. So when Frank suggested meeting for coffee, I honestly didn't expect much. Frank was usually quiet, the kind of guy who nodded along to Carol's rants and kept his head down. I thought maybe he wanted to smooth things over, but I wasn't prepared for what he told me. We met at a little diner near my office. Frank was already sitting in a booth when I walked in, nursing a black coffee and looking more stressed than I'd ever seen him. The man wasn't exactly a picture of health, but that day, he looked downright haggard. He motioned for me to sit down, and I could tell he wasn't there to exchange pleasantries. "Ethan," he started, leaning in like we were about to discuss classified information. "There's something you need to know about Carol." Now, I wasn't exactly Carol's biggest fan, but hearing Frank say it out loud was unsettling. He glanced around the diner like he was worried someone might overhear, then dropped the bomb. Carol's been planning this for months, he said. Selling you the house was part of her plan. I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. What plan? I asked. What are you talking about? Frank sighed and rubbed his temples, like this was physically painful for him. She wanted you to buy the house, get overwhelmed with the repairs, and sell it back to us. Then she'd push for you and Lisa to move in with us. I blinked, stunned. Wait, what? Why the hell would she want that? She wants control, Frank admitted, looking ashamed. She's always wanted control. Over Lisa. Over everything. For a moment, I didn't say anything. I just sat there, letting the words sink in. Carol's antics had always been overbearing. But this was next-level manipulation. She wasn't just meddling. She was scheming, playing some long con to insert herself permanently into our lives. Frank must have taken my silence the wrong way, because he quickly added, I didn't agree with it, Ethan. I told her it was a bad idea. But you know how she is. She doesn't listen to anyone. I let out a bitter laugh. Yeah, no kidding. Then, Frank slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a check for $20,000. I know you've paid much more to renovate the house, but this is all I could pull together. This is my way of making it right, he said. I can give you the rest of the money you spent on the house if you agree to sell it back to me without Carol knowing. I stared at the check, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to rip it up on the spot. This wasn't about the money, it was about the principle. Carol had used Lisa's love for her childhood home as a weapon, manipulating her into convincing me to buy it. And now Frank was trying to buy my silence? I don't want your money, I said, shoving the envelope back toward him. What I want is for your wife to stay the hell out of my life. Frank sighed again, looking defeated. I can't control her, Ethan. Believe me, I've tried. I left the diner angrier than I'd been in a long time. Frank's confession only confirmed what I'd suspected all along. Carol didn't just want the house. She wanted us, under her thumb, where she could dictate every aspect of our lives. And Lisa, she couldn't see it. Or worse, she didn't want to. That night, I sat Lisa down and told her everything. I laid it all out, the real cost of the repairs, and Frank's confession about Carol's twisted plan. I even told her about the $20,000 bribe, hoping it would finally open her eyes. But instead of being shocked or angry at her mom, Lisa turned it all on me. You're obsessed with demonizing her, she said, her voice shaking. She's not perfect, but she's my mom. Why can't you just let it go? Let it go? I snapped. Lisa, she manipulated us into buying this house so she buys it again cheaper. She's trying to control our lives, and you're just letting her. She's just trying to help, Lisa shouted back. You always think the worst of her. That was the moment I realized Lisa wasn't going to change. Carol's grip on her was too strong, and no amount of logic or evidence was going to break it. I was fighting a losing battle. Things escalated quickly after that. Carol must have sensed that I was onto her, because she started ramping up her antics. One night, she showed up at the house with a contractor she'd hired, without consulting us, of course. She claimed she was helping by getting estimates for the repairs. When I told her to leave, she caused such a scene that the neighbors came out to watch. But the final straw came when Carol called the police on me. Yes, you read that right. She claimed I was destroying her property by making changes to the house. When the cops showed up, I handed them the deed with my name on it. They laughed and left, but Lisa didn't find it funny. You're just making things worse, she said, glaring at me. Why can't you try to get along with her? Because she's insane, I shouted. And you're letting her ruin our marriage. That was the breaking point. I told Lisa she had to choose, me or her mother. I didn't want to issue an ultimatum, but I couldn't live like this anymore. Her answer? Silence. She just stared at me, tears in her eyes, and said nothing. The night ended with me kicking her out of the house for choosing her entitled mother over me. As I walked out of the house that night, I felt a strange mix of anger and relief. Anger at Lisa for siding with her mother again, and relief because I finally understood what I had to do. For months, I'd been trying to reason with people who didn't want reason. They wanted control. Carol wanted to control my house, my life, and even my relationship. And Lisa, she couldn't, or wouldn't, see it. I preferred staying at a hotel that night. It gave me the space I desperately needed. I spent this night replaying every argument, every warning sign I'd ignored, and every time I'd let Carol and Lisa push me to the edge. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I wasn't just fighting Carol. I was fighting Lisa's refusal to stand up for our marriage. The next morning, I called my lawyer to start the separation process. I need to protect myself, I told him. He didn't need much convincing. The man had handled enough messy divorces to know when a client was in over their head. He reminded me of the prenup. a little silver lining in the storm, and assured me that it would make things smoother. Still, I wasn't about to leave everything behind without a plan. The house, for one, was a mess, but it was still mine. I decided to rent it out to avoid the constant reminders of Carol's meddling. My real estate connections helped me find a nice young couple who were thrilled to move in, creaky pipes and all. But of course, nothing with Carol is ever simple. Not even a week after the new tenants moved in, I got a frantic call from them. Apparently, Carol had shown up at the house, banging on the door and demanding to be let in. When they refused, she tried to force her way inside, shouting something about family rights and her house. She what? I asked, stunned. She said we didn't belong there and tried to push past us, the tenant explained. We had to call the cops. That was the last straw. I drove straight to the house, fully prepared to confront Carol once and for all. But by the time I arrived, she was gone. The tenants were shaken, but thankfully unharmed. I apologized profusely and assured them that Carol wouldn't be bothering them again. Then I called her. Carol, what the hell is wrong with you? I demanded as soon as she picked up. Excuse me? She said, her tone dripping with fake innocence. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You showed up at my house, and tried to force your way in. Are you out of your mind? That's my family home, she snapped. I have every right to be there. No, you don't, I shot back. You sold it to me. It's mine now. Stay the hell away from my property or I'll press charges. Carol let out a dramatic gasp like I'd just insulted her entire lineage. You wouldn't dare. Try me, I said, hanging up before she could respond. I thought that would be the end of it, but of course Carol had to escalate things. A few days later, I got served with a notice. She was suing me. Her claim? That I'd violated the terms of the sale by renting out the house. Never mind that there were no such terms in the contract. This was pure spite. Carol wanted to make my life as miserable as possible. I forwarded the notice to my lawyer, who assured me it was baseless. She doesn't have a leg to stand on, he said. She's just trying to intimidate you. Meanwhile, Lisa was still living with Carol. And from what I heard, it wasn't exactly sunshine and rainbows. Friends who kept in touch with her told me she seemed miserable. Apparently, Carol's controlling nature was even worse when they shared a roof. Lisa had quit her job to help out at home, which basically meant running errands for Carol and listening to her complaints all day. At first, I felt a twinge of pity, but then I remembered all the times Lisa had chosen her mother over me, all the excuses she'd made, and all the nights I'd spent wondering if I was the crazy one. Pity turned into vindication. She'd made her choice, and now she was living with the consequences. The lawsuit, thankfully, went nowhere. My lawyer filed a motion to dismiss, and the judge saw through Carol's nonsense immediately. This is clearly a frivolous case, the judge said, barely concealing his irritation. Carol's smug expression melted into pure embarrassment as the ruling came down. She was ordered to pay my legal fees, which only added insult to injury. But the best part? The tenants stayed. They loved the house, quirks and all, and had no intention of leaving. Every time Carol tried to meddle, they called the cops, who were more than happy to remind her that she had no claim to the property. Eventually, even Carol had to give up. Lisa, however, wasn't done. About a month after the lawsuit fiasco, she called me. Her voice was shaky, almost desperate. Ethan, can we talk? I hesitated but agreed to meet her for coffee. When I saw her, she looked different, tired, defeated, like the weight of living with Carol had finally crushed her spirit. I made a mistake, she said, her eyes welling up with tears. I should have stood up for you, for us. It was the apology I'd been waiting for, but it didn't feel as satisfying as I'd imagined. Maybe because it was too late. The damage had been done, and I wasn't about to walk back into the lion's den. I'm sorry, I said, keeping my tone even, but I can't do this anymore. I need to move on. Lisa nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. And just like that, it was over. The prenup ensured she didn't get a dime from me. Not the house, not my money, nothing. Carol's grand plan had backfired spectacularly. Instead of controlling me, she ended up stuck with Lisa,